G'day everyone, this is Rangadad. This is not financial advice, this is just the way I'm looking at the market. First, I just wanted to do a shout out to someone that we found out passed away. Was a member of the Origin community and many other communities in Web3. YVO, Evo, I guess would you pronounce it. Username was sometimes YVVS. We found out that he is no longer with us, so shout out to his family. Yeah, that just some shit news to wake up to today. He was known as the Happy Maker, and he was certainly a very involved community member, and a lot of the guys met him personally, and yeah, nothing but glowing reports. So that's very sad news, and yeah, heart goes out to his family. That being said, let's move on to the charts. So I haven't really got resolution on this setup today yet. Neither to the downside or the upside. The overhead sort of looming issue here is the daily stochastic momentum is still, if we closed around here, it's still going to be pointed to the downside, and it's getting very close to getting back below the bullish control zone, which is typically a good time to get out of it. We could do something like what happened over here on the daily. So it could come back below and then just basically go sideways. Momentum will go sideways while price actually goes up. I'd rather that not happen because it's typically a very, very choppy move up if that happens. Very good move to the upside, like a bit of a recovery on global liquidity. That's a really good thing today. And just looking at the advanced decline line. Ah, man, I lost my EMAs. I just updated this to a newer version today and lost the EMAs. Bugger. Anyway, still moving to the upside. I'll have to put the EMAs back on it. Yeah, that's a pretty good sign there. So in general, it's still going in the bullish direction that I've pointed out in the last two videos, but it's still looking a little shaky. And I'll explain that a little bit more. Well, basically, it's just this momentum thing. If we get momentum ticking to the upside, it's probably going to be on the back of a pretty decent candle. So this could just be a pause. And if you look at it from the perspective of this is kind of just grinding up still, up and to the right, that is technically quite a dull market in Bitcoin, and we don't want to short those dull markets. So again, it's still, I know some people have taken profits off the table just up in this region here. I think that's a pretty good area. But at this stage, still sort of waiting for either a confirmed breakdown or confirmed breakout before you start looking to change any actual positions. That's my way of looking at it anyway. Interesting daily candle here. Well, sorry, interesting 4-hour candle. Stochastic momentum on this candle here just got into the bearish zone, but rejected straight out of that. And BBWP is still above the signal line on the 4-hour. So at this stage, that just looks like a decent volume sort of retest of the 50 EMA on the 4-hour. So at this stage, you'd be looking at that quite bullish. Obviously, leaving behind a big green candle, big green vector candle, it can happen. We've been recovering them reasonably quickly, especially when we're at near the highs. So, it's just sort of be careful. We're coming into key trend lines as well, so we may go a little bit sideways again on shorter time frames, just testing this top level. And the bulls really want to see the test, and a pause up here is okay, because it's typically building momentum, getting rid of the shorters, and it will eventually break through that. What we don't really want to see from here is just a failed sort of pump and it just breaks below here. Breaking below this level, it's sort of the line in the sand that Bitcoin seems to have drawn. If we look at Bitcoin on shorter time frames, I pointed out this sort of wedge pattern, which you could have realistically, you could look at it as a bull flag. The issue is it looks like this is a false breakout potential. Still getting, like, it's getting good buying support off here, wicks to the downside. You want to see it hold this level and actually move away. If we do that, then yeah, new high is to be expected. If we can't do that, then I would expect actual breakdown to the downside of this. But there is still going to be some support, I think, at the bottom of this trend line. It's a pretty strong trend line. The only issue is we've tested it quite a number of times now. Could actually draw it back through here as well. Anyway, that's shorter time frames are pretty critical at the moment. And if we look at so we are back above the 50 EMA and the 200 EMA, so that was a really good move. It looked like it wanted to break down below the 1 hour 200, which is the 800 EMA in green here. But it was actually something I noticed on CME. On CME, the 800 was actually a bit lower. So, CME 800 EMA was pretty well the level that held this up, which is the 1 hour 200 EMA. If we look at it on the 1 hour, calculate, 1 hour 200 EMA there, never really broken, confirmed below that. So that's something to keep in mind. CME seems to be a little bit more important these days than what it has been in previous cycles for obvious reasons, but it's just that institutional interest and bigger trading houses are now working it. So it's something to keep in mind when you see breakdowns of key EMAs on other exchanges, that it's worthwhile looking at CME as well. So yeah, pull back into the 50 EMA on CME wouldn't surprise me. Big wick here on the 1 hour, which suggests quite a bit of bullish support here. And the cumulative volume delta RSI is very much postured to the upside. It seems like there is actually a lot of buying support coming through. The volumes are over archingly to the upside. Increasing volatility as well, like this purple and green line. If that that looks like it should continue at this stage. Again, I still think it'll probably pull back a little bit, but there's this momentum for this to shift back to the downside. You'd probably be breaking back below this 200 EMA, and in that case, it will look quite bearish. But for the time being, I'm actually still relatively bullish on this, and I know I probably seem to be flip-flopping a lot, but that's what happens when you're reading the charts. You need to be able to change directions on a heartbeat. Trend line to the upside actually wasn't as strong for CME either. That's interesting. Not on the 1 hour anyway. But yeah, breaks. I think pull back in here and then a break back above is fine. It's just we want it to sort of hold that 50 EMA level. It can recover parts of these vectors, if not all the vectors. But you want to see decent bounce above that. Bit of a rejection off the this middle band is basically the what is it? Linear regression. Average, or for those that do Excel graphs, it's the trend line. So on the hourly, it is kind of more postured to the upside than anything. This looks like just more of a bit of a liquidity recovery that's going on. One thing I wanted to look at on this too is Ethereum. So Ethereum's actually got a big rejection off its trend line. Fairly strong trend line there. Just hide this. Broken back below the 50 EMA and the 200 on the the 15 minute. It's below the 200 on the 1 hour as well. Rejected off that. Ethereum just looks like dog shit compared to everything else, to be perfectly frank. It's not really looking that great. The only thing would be is if it bounces from around here. It is a general uptrend in cumulative volume delta RSI, which isn't a bad thing, but certainly it needs to break above this trend line, put it that way, break and reconfirm, and then okay, it's going to probably actually do a pretty decent move. But for the time being, ETH's not looking great. There is actually a bit of, well, there was some CBD delta on this, so the buying volume was higher than the selling volume in this red candle, which is a sign that, well, can be a sign that you're getting close to a bottom, as you can see with these ones here. But yeah, and look, Ethereum, we haven't fully recovered a lot of these vectors up here, so it has left some vectors behind to the upside. So again, that's sort of the last bit of hopium for Ethereum, is that just if Bitcoin does confirm and it goes for a run, Bitcoin should follow eventually. Ethereum should follow eventually. It's just whether it can break back up into these highs here. So another decent sort of couple of vectors up here into the 4,000s even. So yeah, it's just whether whether we're going down further first or whether we're actually going back up to the highs. And with Ethereum, I'm not willing to to call that either way until we break above that trend line. So yeah, Bitcoin, I think if it can retest on the 1 hour here, this trend line, and move away, I think that would be quite bullish. But interestingly, on the 1 hour, it is actually already fairly extended with CVD, RSI, but typically the RSI can keep sort of trudging sideways and even down as price is going up. So you got to be a little bit careful of that. That's the key wedge as far as I'm concerned. What else we got? Yeah, I mean, stopping volume candle on the 4 hour isn't a great look either, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of the run. We've had red vector candles on, in the middle of runs before as well. So it's just telling you that there's a fair bit of interest that's come into the charts in the last 8 hours. I know Trump actually made an interesting comment in his Davos Q&A around, like, basically he told one of the heads of the major banks, that they need to open up banking more. And I don't know if there's some other news around it that is causing this little pump. Yeah, I don't think it's really off the back of the Loomis announcement, but I reckon those WEF comments are probably what's driven a little pickup here, because he talked about opening up banking more, and in a way that suggested that he basically told the banks they're assholes and people should be treated better by the banks. So I think that does probably translate quite bullish to crypto, but it's all just speculation at the moment. But yeah, good 4 hourly momentum there. 1 hour's overextended a little bit, but it can bounce around there for a little bit. All right, let's go. Have a quick look at the 2-day. 2-day setup's actually looking okay. Still got a day and a half to go. So, but as of the close of the last one, which was yesterday, it's still looking reasonable. And the 5-day, again, if it's still sitting around here or higher, that is a pretty good confirmation on the 5-day there that we should push higher. So longer term timeframes look okay, but with Bitcoin, I'm more interested in the shorter timeframes just because it can move so fast so quickly. But that 5-day setup, if it comes off, typically there's a 30% move after that. So that's where if it does fire, I'll be quite happily calling for 150k Bitcoin, I think, as a high probability. Sol is struggling, and this is, again, it got me more interested in Bitcoin when Sol made its pump and Bitcoin sort of started to look like it was following, but Sol's had a couple of pretty shitty days, just not being able to reconfirm above that all-time high. or the previous all-time high. Sol really needs to get back above there. Let's have a quick look on the 4-hour. Not looking great. Obviously, that value area high there has provided great support. Yeah, need it to probably come down and bounce either off the 200 or the value area high, if it's going to come back at all. For the time being, this move here, I'll just put a fib on it. We have pulled back and tagged the 50, the 0.5 on the fibs. So that does sort of give it permission to keep going. But yeah, again, Sol's not looking great, but momentum's in an area where if momentum bounces from here, that should see it push back up into those 280s at least, I would think. If not higher, if the rest of crypto is going on a run as well, then it should be okay. XRP is actually a little bit more concerning here. If XRP fails the 200, that could be seen as a retest and confirmation that XRP is actually coming down. In which case your target's around the $2.80. That would probably look less bullish for crypto in general, but BBWP ticking to the upside as stochastic momentum is basically just getting into the bearish control zone. It's not really a great sign. What could happen from here is if it bounces and BBWP still is ticking to the upside, then that could actually lead to quite a large run. So the alts are in a little bit of a flux state at the moment. Like none of them have really run that hard when Bitcoin put in a pump, and some of these alts didn't really go with it, and some of them have been smashed. Like it's still not looking great. Need way more liquidity in the markets, and at this stage it seems like the liquidity is actually coming out of the market. Certainly in terms of alts anyway. Total crypto market cap's not looking great either. Looking like it's kind of rolling over. That's something to keep in mind. Stablecoins versus Bitcoin. It's kind of good that we have rejected off this trend line. Retest of that and a breakdown would be okay. Don't want to see it really confirming back up above that anytime soon. That would be relatively, well, that'd be super bearish on Bitcoin, to be honest. So yeah, it's kind of everything's at a bit of a tipping point at the moment. Could go either way. But yeah, some of these things, total crypto market cap dropping this hard. Not ideal. Especially when momentum and BBWP are poised for a decent move to the downside. So keep that in the back of your mind. This is why watching for actually breakouts and confirmation of these things is going to be critical over the next week or two, I think. Well, at least the next 3 or 4 days over the weekend. Okay, go into dailies, Qs. cues showing signs that they may want to pull back a little bit. Normally, I don't like to see a pullback into Friday, but yeah, just keep that in mind for tomorrow because I think it's looking like a pullback is in order. It could still keep ripping though and just getting rid of the shorters out of the system. This has probably already gotten rid of a lot of short positions, to be honest. But interesting that we are pulling back in this region. Decent volume coming through and moving to the upside though. So equal weight cues is, if it keeps moving down from here, it's probably going to be a pretty good signal that the move to the downside has started, but bit of a mixed message on the momentum there for that one. Just looking at the Nasdaq itself on the futures, still potentially got a little bit to go on the 1 hour. And once it's up there, like BBWP is just about to, well, it looks like it's close to breaking above that signal line from a pretty low level. In the bullish control zone too. If that breaks to the downside, that could be signaling that that was the top there. We tagged that 22,000, got slightly above it, and we pulled back. So yeah, look, that generally as a setup, I'd actually be looking for that to roll over, but don't fight the trend at this stage. I think closures below the 200 EMA are probably going to be critical here. Closure and confirmation below the 200 should lead us to pull back a reasonable amount. Probably back into 21,300, 21,400 at least, I would say. For the time being, that is a pretty decent trend line. Depends where you draw that, obviously, but could just be tracking along it. And, you know, if you're tracking along a trend line, you know, whichever way it breaks, it's generally a pretty decent move. So Nasdaq's kind of teetering. S&P 500's doing pretty well the same, but it is actually moving to higher highs. So I just say Nasdaq, S&P 500. S&P 500's actually getting close to a new all-time high again on the SPY anyway. This trend line here is going to be a very interesting level because we've got increasing BBWP right off the lows. If we spike above and then pull back on Friday, that could be the signal that we're waiting for. The SPX. Yeah, it's actually gotten to all-time highs as well. Broke just above. Was that all-time? I think it was. Yeah, right. I mean, if you're closing a weekly above all-time highs coming off this sort of candles, that's actually super bullish if we close like that. What you don't want to see is a big pullback on Friday and we get a hanging man candle off the highs. That wouldn't be great. But yeah, liquidity's still ticking to the upside here. I'm still generally bullish looking at this. No real reason that I can see not to be on stocks. Equal weights doing the same sort of thing. Again, a couple of days down wouldn't surprise me still once we hit those key levels. On probably the SPY and equal weight are probably going to be the two charts to keep an eye on for those pullback areas. Even this one here, we have recovered this vector on the mini futures. But it looks like this may actually play out. IWM. Again, nice pullback into that area there, sort of reconfirming that level as support. So I'm actually going to move support up to there now. Technically, this is potentially going to be some resistance, but I would actually expect that to break through there. I think your next resistance is probably going to be around that point. XLI is moving up strongly, so that's a good sign. XLY, XLP is still moving up. This one's still moving down. That one's still massively bullish. Like that is actually that equal weight XLY, XLP is so bullish that it's suggesting we could just keep running at the moment. You got to expect to pull back soon, but at this stage, there's no reason to fight the trend. Shorters at this point, especially shorting at an all-time high breakout, are probably going to get wrecked. That description, yeah. Staples is still looking like it wants to make a bit of a bounce. So that'll be the first signs that there's something potentially like a pullback coming, and it's kind of suggesting that there is, but still got a little bit to go. Like the pullback in the market didn't come until consumer staples equal weight actually got up a reasonable amount off its lows. And even then, we went sort of sideways for a bit. KRE still toying with that trend line. That's a little bit concerning that we haven't broken above that yet for the banking sector. Could just be waiting for sort of confirmation of what kind of things Trump is going to put in place for easing regulations and things. SMH, good confirmation of that breakout there at the time being. Like pull back into that level and a move away is what you want to see. The semis are looking good. DJI Gold is looking good. DJT Gold looks like we got a little bounce. That's a good sign despite that sort of bad news from the biggest transport company the other day. Yeah. Like fully expecting a pullback at some stage. And probably we're talking tomorrow or Monday, I would think. But this stage, still overall bullishness. And even skews actually breaking to pretty high levels there. What will be interesting is if we're seeing these lower highs on the skew. See here that the last big pullback, we actually made a decent high after a pretty big move up. Then we made a lower high. That was the first little peak there in the S&P. And then we made another lower high, and that signified and basically signified the top. And then we made quite a bit of downside. So for the time being, the skew is still postured to the upside. It'll be interesting to see what today's read is. If that breaks even higher, then I certainly wouldn't suggest that we're just going to completely break down from here. You want to sort of see lower highs happening. Just looking to see, yeah, same sort of thing here before the 08 crisis. You actually had like a downward trend in skew highs well in advance of the lead up to that crash. And we're not seeing that yet. It's pretty overextended, but time being, suggesting there's still more run in this old horse yet. 1 day VIX still coming down. So good levels here. Probably like this is at a level where we could see a bit of a peak and a bit of a pullback. As you can see here, it has marked areas for pullback in the past. Pullback further typically suggests there's a bigger move in them coming in the markets. So probably worthwhile keeping in mind as well. If we actually bounce on the 1 day VIX from this point, that's probably a better thing in terms of the correction is going to be smaller. We start to go into these deeper levels, and corrections tend to go for a little bit, at least like longer term, but also typically deeper. Keep that in mind. I do actually want to make sure I look at that. CLT's had a bit of a down day. That's not a great sign overall. High yield is it's pretty well reached that trend line as well. So it's already starting to suggest a pullback is on the cards soon. This one, again, it's not making any higher or anything, or even a wick higher than the previous day like it kind of has. So, and it'll potentially suggest a pullback. And if this one moves back in, we could see it come back down to these levels, even into this little pocket here. And then that's where you'd be looking for a bounce in the market and a bottom on the P500. For the time being, I actually hope that the pullback starts sooner rather than later. If it doesn't, then it could be a pretty big one. It could be that 10% that everyone's been waiting for. And 2-year, 10 years still hasn't really confirmed anything. Ten-year probably needs to hit this and reject. So I think the thing is Japanese yen. So that's about 3 hours time. The year-on-year inflation in Japan read will come in, and the interest rate decision probably later today. So those two things probably going to be the biggest reason for the US market to actually pull back. Existing home sales may throw a bit of fuel on the fire as well. But generally, I think See, the market should be pricing this in though. So don't be surprised if we don't pull back a huge amount. If they come out and say that, oh, we're actually going to increase it by 50 basis points rather than 25, that's when the market could really take a dive. Like the unwind, the carry trade unwind could be quite substantial. But I suspect the carry trade unwind's kind of probably been happening over this last little pullback anyway. I think it could be a case of, if it's in the news, it's in the price, and those people that panic short on an interest rate decision may actually get squeezed out. So just be aware of that. It did cause markets to drop quite a bit last time they did it, which I think was, where was it? Back in here. But it didn't last super long either. It was just really aggressive to the downside. So that could affect Bitcoin quite a lot. But this is a really good sign on global liquidity. Really good move to the upside. Reclaimed that trend line at this stage. So that's kind of what we want to see. Don't want to see that breaking down again. Percentage of stocks above the 50 is actually taking a bit of a rest. That again is at a pretty key level. It has sort of been resistance and support quite a lot at this level. So again, that's kind of suggesting that we may get a little pullback from here. Probably a region, not necessarily a single spot for this one. But that there is an area where you tend to get changes in direction. So again, a couple of days down, but overall long time frames, I'm still expecting it to find, if it does pull back, expecting it to find a bit of support. Aussie. Went higher than I thought it would. Total crypto market cap's actually come up just while I've been talking here. Geez, the shorters are going hard on it, on this move. The longs are still creeping up though. It's interesting that that is moving up as Bitcoin has kind of been choppy. So the accumulation of this, even though Bitcoin has technically still been grinding up, is actually a pretty good sign for upside movement. Yeah, okay. I think that's about all I wanted to cover on the actual charts. I'll just quickly go over liquidity side of things, liquidation maps. As you can see on the 3 month liquidation map, there is a ton down at 75. I think if we break down from these levels, or there's something going on bigger in the overall economy, if we do see a 10% pullback in S&P 500, I'd actually expect Bitcoin to probably come down, I mean, at least into 85, but that's got to be looking attractive at 75. We go back out to the 6 month. No, I mean, the 6 months suggesting potentially that's more attractive, but I don't think we're getting there anytime soon. So it's actually suggesting there's a bit more of a balance between upside and downside. So there is quite a bit of liquidation levels up in here compared to these ones. But 188, 283 million versus 200 million. A little bit more balanced just looking at it from the longer term perspective. But it looks like we're rejecting that downward trend line at the moment. So that's good news for Bitcoin bulls. Even though like quite a lot of red here in the bid-ask delta at this high. So the fact that we haven't really pulled back too far and we haven't reconfirmed back within that wedge is relatively bullish. Just be great if we can clear that that previous high there. We clear that, which I think around 106 or something, and that would be good. CBD is also ticking back to the upside, as looks like a bit of a reversing trend here. That's another good sign. Yeah, good bounce off the 1 hour 50 EMA there. Just needed to follow through. There's a real arm wrestle going on between the bulls and the bears. No real significant action at these levels compared to the last month. Just go to 7 days. Coinbase, same sort of story. No massive action yet. Marathon Digital, there has been quite a bit of action at these levels still. This is sort of what concerns me. Some of these charts, there's just so much volume coming through at these levels. And IBIT actually hasn't bounced as hard as Bitcoin has off this downward trend. So that's not great. Just looking at this, if Bitcoin does break back into that wedge, there's going to be a fair bit of support around the same sort of levels as what this massive trade came in, I think. Unless they've already cashed out and there's no one interested in buying it back around here. But this is showing fair few big, large trade clusters in this level, which typically is a reasonable level of support, but it's also a reasonable level of resistance. So if we can break above these, then it actually should suggest we're going to go on quite a good run. So again, it's kind of a little bit each way at the moment. No big trades coming through. These big ones tend not to come through during the sessions. They're more towards the end, so worthwhile watching that after the market close, towards the end of the close. Yeah. XLP, it looks like these ones might have been actually orders, like buyers. Defended level there. Have to roll over. No massive trades coming through on XLY consumer discretionary either. So if the market was going to really turn massively red, you'd actually expect consumer discretionary to have a decent trade on the dark pools. And technology's still ticking to the upside. So that's a pretty good sign as well. Although this week there has been a bit of action at the highs here, so that's not great. A sweep there isn't great either. Bitcoin's trying. Pretty aggressively trying. The other thing is sentiment trade is getting quite low on smart money. if we are bullish over the next few months, then you'd expect this to actually tick up today. It's typically a day behind, so after the close, that should update. It'll be interesting to see, but we probably need a day of sort of pullback, and then you'll start to see this tick up again, which would be reasonably well. I mean, it probably suggests that we've started to roll over, but you want to see the smart money starting to come back in once we start dipping. All right, I think that's about it. Lots of orders above, up around up to these all-time highs here too. So 111. If we're going there, I'm still thinking 115. A few more orders in here below coming in, so that's why I think we're getting such an arm wrestle. Lots of liquidity both sides at the moment. Lots of shorters coming in. There's actually more shorters coming into the charts in the shorter time frames than there is long liquidity. So that's Bitcoin loves to take shorts out. And it looks like the setup is such that it should actually do that. Momentum, like it's very close to the signal line. But if we do push a little bit higher today, that will be quite a bullish close. Big green candle off the 50 on the 1 hour. That's actually, again, there's nothing super bearish about that price action. Might chop around a little bit over the next couple of hours though. Just grind along this kind of level. But at this stage, it looks like it wants to move higher. It's just coming into some resistance here on basically the linear regression, standard deviation. So it's coming off a bit of a reset in volatility, which you'd kind of expect. Yeah, I mean, I have seen it break above the top band of this linear regression channel. When it does, it tends to go on a pretty decent run. Lots of volume coming through here. Massive green volume. What we don't want to see is a big basically these guys get exhausted really quickly. We don't want to see that, which that would look like just non-vector candles coming back down into this region. It's okay to have a big red candle in there and then a bounce away from that again. But yeah, that's hard to be bearish when you're seeing a lot of volume coming into the upside there. But holy dooly. The issue is, like, who are the sellers at this point? Because they're putting a lot of money down. They're potentially really trying hard to push this back down. It's fucking arm wrestle at the moment. Have a look on the 5 minute. Yeah, 5 minutes looking pretty good. Ah, man. Failure. Oh, man, it doesn't like running on the 5 minute. That'll be the CBD count. Yeah. Damn it. I wish I had the freaking CBD. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. Looks like the Bulls are back, at least for the time being. All right, I'll leave it there. Good luck to all of us. It's good. Sol's getting a bid as well and reclaiming that trend line at this stage. You want to see Sol breaking through this previous all-time high. That's been a pretty key level. And then it should break through this wedge pattern as well at some stage. So good moves. Did we just get some news through from Trump or something? I'd say we must have. Okay. Have a good one. Catch you later.